Look at her. Dressed like she's on a charity stage. Someone should tell the bride what real life looks like. My sister-in-law spat, the laugh behind her voice like knives tapping a glass. I felt the room tilt as if someone had nudged the whole house to see if I would fall. The chandelier threw narrow, arrogant light that cut across their smiles and landed on my hands, on the cheap ribbon at my throat. My heart beat loudly enough to be rude. My breath was a small animal in my ribs. Hi everyone, my name is Maya Sinclair. I'm 28 and I learned to pack my dignity into a suitcase long before I ever learned how to fold a wedding dress. My grandmother had come to me in a dream the night before, brittle, smelling of jasmine and old pages. Granddaughter, run away from these people immediately, she had warned, her voice urgent as a secret. Get up in the morning and go to your mother-in-law's house, and you'll see everything. I did not take dreams as blueprints. I took them as small maps you sometimes follow when you don't know which way to go. The front door at my mother-in-law's was open, not in welcome but as if it had been unlocked so a lie could slip through. The hallway smelled like cold lemon and someone's expensive cologne trying too hard to be comforting. Voices, low, practiced, flowed from the kitchen where I knew they would be arranging the seating chart for humiliation and ceremony. They were all there. My husband standing too straight, his jaw a hard line that tried to hide the way his hands trembled. His sister with the perfect laugh. My mother-in-law smoothing a napkin like a small ritual surrender. On the table, where weddings usually keep bread and salt and blessing, there was a folded envelope with my name on it in a hand that knew how to write ownership. I stepped closer because my feet had decided my body should learn the truth before my mind consented. The envelope was heavy. Inside, a set of receipts, a list, a photograph clipped to a note, my apartment address, a bank transfer timestamp, a phrase in bold, sold while she was gone. Their faces did not twitch. Not one. It was the practiced stillness of people who had rehearsed not being caught. I felt as if someone had turned the lights down and left me to read the script they expected me to follow. Outside, a child's bicycle lay on the lawn like an accusation. I read the note twice. Then 3 times. The air narrowed to the size of a pin. My grandmother's jasmine hung in that silence like an accusing witness. I held the paper until the ink went soft under my fingers and realized the nightmare was not a warning. It was a map they'd already drawn. The wedding was not a joining. It was a closing chapter where I was meant to be erased. They were waiting for me to cry. Instead I folded the paper and walked back into the room where everyone smiled and the music began to play. The knife of that smile cut something open inside me, and I decided very quietly not to bleed the way they wanted. At the edge of my palm, the photograph slipped from my fingers and fell face down on the polished floor. The paper burned against my skin like it carried its own pulse. I kept my face still, too still, and that's when my mother-in-law smiled the way people smile before turning a knife. "Oh, Maya," she cooed, "you really didn't think we'd let you keep that apartment, did you? It's in the family's name now. Your family, right?" The word family landed like a slap wrapped in velvet. My husband avoided my eyes, busy rearranging a centerpiece that didn't need fixing. He said quietly, "It's better this way, babe. We needed the money for the wedding." The chandelier hummed. I could hear the small crackle of the candles, the faint rustle of the receipt inside my hand. My grandmother's voice replayed in my mind, "Run away from these people immediately." I realized then that she hadn't been warning me of danger. She'd been warning me of ownership. I looked around that pristine kitchen, the white marble island, the polished silverware, the photos lined along the wall like trophies. Every smiling face in those frames was part of the same quiet conspiracy. They didn't steal out of desperation. They stole because it was easy. I asked softly, "So, I don't own anything now?" Silence. Even the clock stopped pretending to tick. My husband exhaled through his nose and muttered, "Technically you never did. I signed the transfer last week. You just hadn't noticed." A strange calm spread through me, the kind that comes before a storm learns your name. I smiled, a slow, tired thing, and said, "Thank you for telling me." They blinked. Confused. They expected tears or begging. But I had already begun building something in my mind. A quiet plan, brick by brick. Later, when the music and laughter returned, I excused myself to the bathroom. My reflection looked unfamiliar, like a woman rehearsing her own escape. I took out my phone, scrolled through messages, and found one unopened email from my grandmother's lawyer dated a month before she died. Subject line, "For Maya, Read when they think they've won. My fingers trembled as I tapped it open. Inside was a single sentence. The house you live in isn't theirs. I looked up at my reflection again and smiled. I couldn't feel my legs for a moment. The words glowed on the screen like they had been waiting for me. The house you live in isn't theirs. I scrolled down. Attached was a scanned document. A deed, notarized, signed months before my grandmother's passing. The property's name was mine. My apartment. The one they had just claimed to have sold. My pulse steadied. It was the first time that night I felt something like air in my lungs again. They had no idea. My grandmother had outplayed them long before I even stepped into this house. I slipped the phone into my purse and rejoined the living room. The laughter returned, brittle and shiny. My mother-in-law was telling some story about traditional obedience. My husband's friends nodded as if she were reading gospel. "Everything okay, Maya?" my husband asked, pretending to care, his arm resting lazily on the back of the couch. "Everything's perfect," I said, sitting down beside him. "In fact, I think I finally understand what Grandma meant." He frowned, unsure whether to smile or question me. I tilted my head slightly, mirroring his own confident smirk. For the first time I saw him clearly, not as the man I married, but as the actor he'd been all along. I remembered how he'd insisted on handling all my paperwork, to make life easier. How his mother had laughed about modern girls who don't understand finances. I remembered the soft jokes, the quiet decisions, the documents I'd signed without reading because I thought love meant trust. Now I knew better. When dessert came, I excused myself again, but this time to make a call. I stepped outside into the cold air where the night pressed close around me. My voice was steady as I spoke into the phone. "Yes, this is Maya Sinclair. I'm forwarding you a document, and I need confirmation by morning that the property title is still active under my name." The man on the other end paused, then said, "If it's the one your grandmother filed, then yes, they can't touch it." I closed my eyes. The jasmine scent was there again, faint, protective. Tomorrow they would learn that the house they'd sold never belonged to them. And I would make sure the truth arrived with witnesses. The night didn't end, it just changed shape. The laughter thinned as everyone drifted home, leaving behind perfume crumbs and lies that still floated in the air. My husband kissed my cheek before closing the door, the gesture hollow. When he finally went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The chandelier light dimmed, leaving ripples of shadow across the receipts on the table. I laid out everything they'd given me, the envelope, the photos, the fake sale papers, and beside them my grandmother's document. The signatures told the story in quiet ink. And hers. Not his. Not theirs. I took a deep breath, pulled out my laptop and drafted an email. The subject line read, "To the registrar's office. Request for verification of ownership dispute." I attached every piece of evidence, every timestamp, every photograph. Then I scheduled it to send at 7 a.m., the exact time the wedding planner was supposed to arrive. It was my own kind of ceremony. Around midnight I heard footsteps behind me. My husband stood at the door, sleepy, irritated. "You're still up." "Just finalizing something important," I said. He yawned, rubbing his neck. "Don't stress about that apartment, Maya. We did what we had to." I smiled faintly. "I know." He nodded, relieved, and went back upstairs, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing beneath his roof. When the clock struck 7, sunlight leaked through the curtains like a verdict. My phone buzzed once. Email sent successfully. Minutes later, another buzz, this one from an unknown number. Acknowledged. Title verified. You are sole owner. Fraudulent sale flagged for investigation. I stared at the message, a strange mix of grief and power swirling inside me. I thought of my grandmother's voice, soft but iron-edged. Run away from these people immediately. No, I decided. I wouldn't run this time. Downstairs, I heard my mother-in-law's voice rising in panic. "What do you mean the property's frozen?" I stood up, straightened my dress and whispered to the empty room, "Now you'll see what I saw." Then I went downstairs, calm as dawn breaking after a storm. The living room was a battlefield disguised as breakfast. My mother-in-law clutched her phone like it was a lifeline, her voice sharp and trembling. "What do you mean frozen? We already sold it." Across from her, my husband scrolled through his messages with eyes widening by the second. His face drained of color when he saw the same text I'd received. The one confirming my ownership. "Mom, stop shouting," he muttered, though his own voice quivered. "Maybe it's a glitch." "A glitch?" she snapped. "You told me it was done. You said she signed." I stood in the doorway quietly, the morning sun framing me like a witness stepping into court. "I did sign," I said, my tone calm. "But apparently not what you thought." They turned toward me as if I'd walked in with thunder at my back. I moved closer, each step deliberate. "It seems Grandma filed a title transfer before she passed," I continued. "Directly to me. The registrar confirmed it this morning." My husband's mouth opened, then closed again. His mother's expression hardened into disbelief. "You're lying." "She wouldn't." "She did." I placed the printed document on the table. The official seal gleamed in gold. "I didn't want this either, you know. I thought we were a family." Silence. My husband tried to reach for the papers, but I stopped him. "Don't. You've taken enough without asking." Something broke in the air between us then, an invisible contract of obedience snapping in two. He exhaled, sat down heavily, and muttered, "You could have talked to me first." I laughed softly, not cruelly, just tired. "Like how you talked to me before selling my home?" No one answered. The only sound was the distant ticking of the kitchen clock, marking the end of their little empire 1 second at a time. The wedding planner's car pulled up outside. She rang the bell, unaware she was walking into ruins. My mother-in-law whispered, "Paya, please. Not today. There are guests." I turned to her with a steady smile. "Oh, there will still be a wedding. Just not the one you planned." And then I walked toward the door to greet the guests, calm, radiant, and ready for the truth to unfold. The door swung open, and the morning air carried the smell of roses and tension. The planner smiled, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair. Oh, are we running a bit late?" Behind her, delivery vans pulled up one after another. Catering, flowers, linens, all booked in my name and billed to my account. The irony was almost poetic. "Yes," I said evenly. "But everything is about to start right on time." Inside, my husband and his mother scrambled to whisper shout at each other. I caught fragments. "Cancel everything, lawyer, she's bluffing." Their panic was a melody I'd waited too long to hear. As guests began arriving, confusion painted the morning. Friends from both sides entered smiling, unaware that they'd stepped into the middle of an unraveling lie. My mother-in-law greeted them with forced cheer, her lipstick trembling. My husband tugged at his tie like it was strangling him. I stayed silent, letting the quiet storm build. And when everyone was seated in the backyard, beneath the arch of white roses my grandmother once grew, I took the microphone meant for vows. "Before we begin," I said, my voice steady, "there's something I need to share. This wedding was planned around love, or so I thought. But some people here decided love should come with a price tag." A ripple of uneasy laughter. I continued, "They sold my apartment behind my back, forged my signature, and thought I'd never find out. Unfortunately for them, my late grandmother was smarter than all of us." Gasps. The crowd shifted. My husband stood pale. "Maya, don't do this here." I looked at him calmly. "You did this here." Then I held up the document for everyone to see, the title deed with my name printed in bold. "For anyone wondering, this house you're standing in, the one you called family property, it's mine." A stunned silence swept through the garden. The planner froze mid-step, holding a bouquet that now looked out of place. I placed the microphone back on the table. "So no," I said softly, "there won't be a wedding today. But there will be a beginning." And I walked away as the roses trembled in the wind. The garden behind me erupted into whispers. Guests shifted uncomfortably, torn between pity and curiosity. My husband stood frozen in his own suit, suddenly looking smaller beneath the morning sun. "Don't walk away," he called after me, voice cracking. "You're humiliating yourself." I stopped, turned slightly, and said, "No, I'm just giving everyone a clear view of what you did." The silence that followed was louder than any argument. My mother-in-law dropped into a chair, her hand covering her face. Her friends avoided her eyes, pretending to scroll through their phones. I walked toward the gate, the gravel crunching beneath my heels like applause from the earth itself. Then my phone buzzed, another message from the registrar's office. "Formal complaint received. Fraud investigation initiated. Respondents: husband's name, mother-in-law's name." My throat tightened, but not with sadness. It was something heavier, relief maybe. The kind that comes when truth finally catches up to deceit. Behind me I heard footsteps. My husband's. Maya, please. Let's talk about this privately, he said, his voice suddenly gentle, desperate. I turned to face him. Privately? That's how this started, remember? Behind closed doors, signing papers I didn't see. He flinched. For the first time his practiced charm cracked open and I saw fear inside it. We can fix this, he whispered. You already tried to fix it, I said. Just not for me. He stared at the ground. I didn't mean to hurt you. I almost laughed. That's what people say when they realize the damage finally shows. He reached out a hand but I stepped back. Don't touch me. From today we're not bound by lies or love. A single gust of wind scattered rose petals across the lawn, sweeping between us like a curtain falling after a long, dishonest play. I turned and walked toward my car. As I opened the door, the faint scent of jasmine floated in again, my grandmother's quiet way of saying, "Now you can leave." I whispered, "Thank you," started the engine and drove toward my own house, the one that still carried her name and now my freedom. The road home looked different that morning, quieter somehow. The kind of quiet that follows after a storm finally breaks. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from fear but from release. Every turn felt like peeling away a layer of someone else's script I'd been forced to act in. When I reached my apartment, the one they'd tried to steal, the gatekeeper smiled softly. "Madam, police officers came by. They said your name's on all the new documents now." His words felt like air after drowning. Inside, sunlight slipped across the floorboards my grandmother had once polished herself. Everything smelled faintly of jasmine again. Maybe it was just the flowers by the window. Maybe it was her way of telling me she'd been right all along. I sat on the couch, opened my laptop and saw new messages flooding in. Reporters asking for comment, relatives pretending they'd always supported me, and one from my husband. Just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long moment then typed back, "You're forgiven." But forgiveness isn't an invitation back. Then I closed the laptop, locking that chapter behind glass. Weeks passed. Investigations began and their accounts froze. I didn't need revenge anymore. Life had already arranged its own quiet justice. The house, the papers, the truth, all mine now, not as trophies, but as proof that silence can win louder than rage. Sometimes I'd walk past the mirror in the hallway and catch a glimpse of myself. Not the trembling bride, not the obedient daughter-in-law, but a woman who had finally remembered her own reflection. I'd whisper to it, "We made it." On the anniversary of my grandmother's death, I lit a candle and placed the old photograph beside it. Her eyes seemed to smile in the flickering light. "Thank you for teaching me to listen," I said quietly. "Even in dreams." The flame swayed just once as if nodding. Outside, wind moved through the jasmine vines, carrying a scent that no longer felt like warning, but peace. And for the first time in a long time I slept without fear.